Coming at you live, coming at you live. It is your boy Skillz with the latest installment of Skillz on Sports, where if you want hard-hitting, in-depth, play-by-play knowledge of the sporting world, you're not going to get it here. You're going to get me, a non-professional athlete of any period of his life, just rambling on about the world of sports and a little bit about the world of life. Because that's what I do. This sports is my thing. And a few of you seem to like it, so I'm going to keep doing it. Here we are. It is November 7th, 2024. We are 2 days after election night, and I'm going to connect that to the sports world here in a little bit. The main theme of tonight's show is there have been a few deaths in the sporting world, in the world of the NBA, NFL, well, not NFL, but in NBA and MLB, that I have not had a chance to cover in depth. And I think these people deserve more than just mention in passing. I think these people deserve actual time spent on them and a show more or less devoted to them. Because the last couple of shows I've done, there's not been a proper period to insert proper testimony on the lives of Fernando Valenzuela, passed away last week. Pete Rose passed away at the end of September. Tiant passed away in October as well. All three Major League superstars, all three, some believe should be in the Hall of Fame. We'll get into all that here in a little bit. I'm also going to talk about a couple of things from, a couple of news tidbits from today, but that's not going to be the main focus. I've been following sports since 1990. That was my first year as a baseball fan. And I've been a baseball fan ever since. As I stir my coffee here down below, it's been my first love. It's something that whenever I've been frustrated with it, I've let it go for a little while. I've declared myself a non-fan of either my particular team, the Giants, or Major League Baseball in general. I can't stay away. I remember in 1999, Jeff Weaver and somebody from the White Sox, I think it was, who was it from the White Sox? Or was it Jim Parquet and Bobby Higginson? I'll look that up. Those guys got into a huge brawl in 99 that I watched in San Luis Obispo, and it was so ugly and so prolonged it turned me off the sport for a while. I didn't think I was going to come back for a while, but I did. I've been a baseball fan ever since. 35 seasons now, dating back to 90, as I said. One of the few, there weren't that many guys, there weren't that many major leaguers I could name before the 1989 World Series. I was born in 1980, so obviously I was 9 years old when that happened. And I would have in my possession gifts from other people, baseball cards, even though I was not a known baseball fan as of yet. I somehow got my hands on baseball cards from the mid to late 80s. And learned a few names from that era. Names like Orel Hershiser, Darryl Strawberry, and, of course, Fernando Valenzuela. Fernando Valenzuela was a god in the early 80s, especially in Southern California. Had that screwball, Fernando Mania. He'd been this young kid. He was 19 when he came up, if not 20. Came up in 80, but it was 81, the strike-shortened season, that he really made his impact. Dude won 13 games that year as a rookie. Dude won the Cy Young Award. Dude won Rookie of the Year for the Dodgers, who went on to win the World Series that year. Behind him, and several others. Fernando was, you think about Shohei now to the Japanese community. That's what Fernando was to the Mexican community, the Mexican-American community. And hell, there's, non-Mexican Americans. He had a load of supporters of that variety as well. So he was a transcendent superstar, humble, just a young kid, happy-go-lucky, long hair, glasses. Didn't really even seem like he was in full understanding of what was going on, of what he was doing. Because what he was doing, full understanding of what he was doing, he was carving out a great, and I mean great career. Unfortunately, he tailed off after around turning 30, and he didn't quite get the footing needed to in the second half of his career to get him that spot in Cooperstown. But man, during the 80s, there wasn't that many better. He was durable. Dude threw like over 200. I had the numbers in front of me. I pulled all this up ahead of time. One of the rare times I've actually been prepared for a show. Fernando threw for over 250 innings for 6 years in a row. There are some starters now who might need 1.5 seasons to throw 250 seasons or innings. And Fernando did it. He wasn't in the best shape, God bless him, but he didn't need to be. He seemed to take that look up in the sky as he was throwing, making you wonder if he knew where that ball was going to go. And he did walk his share of hitters. He didn't have great command, but he struck out his share of hitters too. He was a winner. He was a lovable guy. He went on to work for the Dodgers later on in life, on the Spanish broadcast. I think he had another role with the team too. That's good hot coffee. It's going to give me heartburn, but I don't care. English muffins and coffee. I recommend it to anybody on a cold November night. He passed away, Fernando did, last week. He was just a little bit shy of his 64th birthday. They may have even buried him on his 64th birthday. I have to look that up. He was buried this week. And you got to look at all the former teammates who were there, from Mike Scioscia, his longtime catcher, who spoke at the funeral, to Orel Hershiser, his longtime rotation mate. Guys like Ron Cey came out to, and it's too many for me to just name. I didn't bring the list with. It's one thing I did not prepare. I did not prepare a list of VIPs at Fernando's funeral, but there's a lot of them. A lot of ex-Dodgers, which normally would send me into, a skyrocketing blood pressure. But my hate for the Dodgers is not. It's irrelevant right now. You have to understand, my hate for the Dodgers is more of a cartoonish hate, except for 2021 when they knocked out my Giants. What Fernando was, and let me tell you, because like I said, he was one of the few players I'd heard of prior to becoming a full-on baseball fan in 1990. So when the Dodgers released him at the end of 1990, in spite of the fact that he was still a decent pitcher, he wasn't the great pitcher he had been early on in his career, but he was still a serviceable pitcher. He still won double digits, still gave him innings. And then for whatever reason, they decided to let him go. And I don't know what those reasons. To this day, I never even really looked into that, even though I should have. It could have been just an age thing. Could have been just they were trying to cut payroll. I don't know. But they did let him go. And I remember being 10 years old and really struggling to understand, that's Fernando Valenzuela. He still wins games. Why let him go? Why is he not going to be with the Dodgers anymore? This doesn't make sense. I'm willing to bet that his velocity is probably down, for starters, among other things. He's getting older. Teams just move on. It just happens. Like today, the Cubs traded Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks was the last remaining Cub from the 2016 World Series team. And he had been up and down last season, as performance-wise, he'd been up and down, but everyone still loved and respected him. Still, it comes to a point where you got to move on. My Warriors right now are playing 7-1, which is .875 winning percentage basketball, and they're doing it in spite of the fact they had to make the tough decision in the offseason to let Klay Thompson go to the Mavericks, the Dallas Mavericks. And part of the reason why they're doing so well is because the guy who replaced Klay, Buddy Hield, is lighting it up. Tearing it up like he's never done before. Tearing it up like there's likely little chance Klay would have done for us. So, I didn't understand it at age 10, but now I understand relationships have to end sometimes. And the Dodgers had already lost Hershiser that year to what looked like it was going to be career-ending surgery. Whatever the surgery was, I remember it was one of the first, if not the first of its kind, or Hershiser's arm was really jacked up. And so the Dodgers, maybe they just want to get younger. Losing Orel and losing Fernando. So, in any event, when you have an icon, a cultural icon, and you're a fan of the sport at all, and I'm a diehard Giants fan and have been for 35 seasons, it doesn't matter what uniform that icon wore. If you truly respect the game, you'll respect someone like Fernando Valenzuela, what he did for the game, bringing in Mexican community, that had kind of turned against the Dodgers because of issues having to do with the land the Dodger Stadium was built on, which I'm not going to get into here, but that's basically the summary of it. Fernando helped bring people together. Well, pitching and his personality, I've heard nothing but good things said about him as a man. Now, granted, I haven't dug deep, but if there's skeletons in someone's closet, they'll come out, especially when they die. If I haven't heard anything about Fernando that's anything other than glorious, anything other than positive. That he was a gentleman, a great friend. And here's if you want to, I'll tell you this, especially if you're a Dodgers fan out there, because it almost happened to me. If you ever want to cut onions, if you just need to get one out, and you're a Dodgers fan and you're having a hard time, just because sometimes you just need to let it out. That's just what they say. Let it out sometimes. Look up the video. I believe it was from 2017 or 18. Probably it could have been either one because the Dodgers won the World Series both years. Vin Scully. We all know who that is. He had just retired after a billion years as a Dodgers announcer, and he takes the mound to do the ceremonial first pitch before, I believe it was one of the World Series games of one of those 2 years. And it's all rehearsed. He didn't really hurt himself. It's all rehearsed. Vin Scully says, "Oh, my shoulder. Actually, goes to his left shoulder. My shoulder. I think I need the left-hander." And sure enough, what do you know? In his mid-50s or late 50s, early 60s by that point, here comes Fernando to the mound, and you want to talk about electric. You want to talk about electric. I'm starting to feel the onions just thinking about it. How electric that stadium got when Fernando took that mound. The love for that man had not waned as generations had passed. 40 years later, just about, they still had love for that man. He got more applause than Scully did, which is saying something because everybody loves Scully. No one hates Scully out in that area. So look that up. If you've had a tough day at work, as we hear sirens blare in the background, can't really do much about that. Yeah, that might make some onions cut in your household, and then you can use those onions to make sloppy Joe. I made sloppy Joe tonight, which I'm not eating right now, but I will be after the show. So rest in peace, Fernando Valenzuela. 1981 Cy Young winner, 1981 Rookie of the Year, passed away just prior to age 64. I won't tell that story. That's not really relevant. Oh, by the way, I will tell this story before I move on. Fernando Valenzuela's career did not end when he left the Dodgers. His major league career did not end. He also pitched for the Angels, the Orioles, the Phillies, the Padres, for whom he won, I believe it was 13 games in 1996, and didn't get a card from Topps. What the hell, Topps? How you not get Fernando? You could have sold sets just for that one card in a set, and you don't give him a card after a year like that. And then he finished up with the Cardinals in '97, by which time he must have been about 37. So it didn't end for him with the Dodgers. He had to conquer some obstacles. He had to pitch. I believe it was in the Mexican League. I could be wrong about that, but he did pitch in some other league before he made it back to the majors with the Orioles in '93. So there you go. There's your Fernando Valenzuela trivia knowledge for the day. I respected the guy, and I grieve for him and wish condolences to all his family and loved ones. We also lost Luis Tiant in October of 2024. If you didn't know much, now he goes back another generation. And Fernando. Luis Tiant was more of a 60s, 70s guy, and he made his biggest impact for the Cleveland Indians and the Boston Red Sox. And he was on that Red Sox team in '75 that went to the World Series, the one where Carlton Fisk is trying to keep the home run fair and all that against the Reds. That obviously they did not win because they're still in the throes of the curse. Tiant was one of a kind. His career ended. His career ended the year I was, or a couple years after I was born. I was 2 years old when his career ended. But I've looked up his numbers. I've seen him on video. The guy was special, especially in his Red Sox days. The guy was special. He won a lot of games. He helped a lot of good teams, and he did it in style. You know, Johnny Cueto. Let's do it this way. Johnny Cueto, the longtime Reds and Giants pitcher, who's now currently with, well, I don't know who he was with this past year, but I think it was the Angels for a minute this year, and then he went to Texas. No, he started with Texas with his old manager Bruce Bochy. Then I think he got some starts with the Angels, and they let him go. But Cueto's had a long career. He's been around since '08, so he's near the end. But he's known for his odd deliveries. I shouldn't call them odd. Odd isn't the word I'm looking for. He's known for his colorful deliveries. Turning and hesitating and twisting his back, almost facing center field and putting his back to the plate and stuff like that. He's known to do a lot of unconventional things like that, and they've helped him on the mound over the years. Cueto's had a great career. Been a world champion with the Royals. Helped the Giants, in 2016 get to the playoffs. Threw a great game in that playoffs. He was with the Reds for a long time. Only thing Cueto screwed up on was kicking Jason LaRue in the head. So if you're a fan of Johnny during a brawl in 2010, if you're a fan of Johnny Cueto, you would have loved Louis Tiant, because Louis Tiant was Johnny Cueto times about 3. With all the deliveries and all the color and all the flavor, fun to watch as heck. Never got that world championship. I don't think. Did he? Was he on the Yankees that won? He was not on the Yankees team that won. So, according to what I'm looking at here, Louis Tiant did not get that ring, but he had a great career. He won 20 games or more, 4 different times. Made some All-Star teams, not many, but made some. Finished up with well over 200 wins, and hardly got any consideration for the Hall of Fame. And why that is because he had a lot of ordinary seasons in between his great seasons. And it's just, 229 wins, that's a lot of wins. But there was a couple seasons where he followed up a 20-win season with a 20-loss season. He had that 5-year stretch between 72 and 76, that 5-season stretch where he won like a million games. Was a 2-time ERA champ. But the voters just, they look more at his overall lack of great years, because aside from the 20-win seasons, he really didn't have many great years out of the 19 that he pitched. I still think he deserved more of a consideration than he got, just based on the numbers and just based upon his flair, his entertainment value. Because he's from Cuba, and he must have brought in probably thousands Cuban fans to the game. Cuba wasn't, what it is today, where you can just freely go in and out. Used to be, Cuban people, to get out of Cuba was dangerous, right? So they really connected to the heroes from their homeland. A lot. I'm sure they still do now, obviously, but it was different in Tiant's time, because it was all like you all had to go through the same struggles and ordeals to get to the United States, to get out of Cuba, to get off the island. It wasn't it wasn't just like now where you can just get on a boat. Back then, you were risking your life. So, he had a share of fans. We had more than a share of fans, I'm sure. And he had tons of support for the Hall of Fame from the everyday community. He just didn't have it from the Baseball Writers Association of America. I would vote for him. And as I told you in my last broadcast, when I put together the Skillz Savage Plates of Greatness, which is going to be the equivalent and a successor to the Baseball Hall of Fame, Tiant's going to have a spot in there. I don't know what tier he's going to be in, but he's going to have a spot in there. You can't ignore that 5-year period. You can't ignore the overall body of work, 229 wins versus 172 losses. He never got a ring, but he made the playoffs a bunch of times. There's a spot for him. You don't just leave someone like that on the outside looking in when you talk about the all-time greats of the game. How can Luis Tiant, with everything he did and everything he meant to the game of baseball, or how can he not have a spot in the Baseball Hall of Fame, while someone like, let's say, Actually, I don't want to disparage anybody. I don't want to disparage anybody. But there's lesser accomplished pitchers who got in, and I don't think that's right. You can't always just go by the numbers. You got to go by the impact on the game. It's one of the criteria that the Skillz Towers Plates of Greatness is considering. So Luis Tiant, if you're listening to this, I never got to see you in person. I never got to meet you, but I've seen you pitch on film. I've seen your numbers. I've read about you. I believe you are right there with the best. I believe you deserve a plaque, and you're going to get one from me when my time, when my plates of greatness are open and finished. I promise you that. I almost said when my time is up. Like, I'm not going to die or do anything. Save the most controversial for last. Save maybe the best out of them all for last, because he was the only one who was guaranteed to go to the Hall of Fame. Out of these three people I'm talking about, he was the one who was guaranteed to go to the Hall of Fame. He's the guy who they make Hall of Fames for. If he played in the 30s, he would have been one of the original 5 Hall of Famers, along with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and those guys. And that's Peter Edward Rose, Sr., number 14 for the Cincinnati Reds mostly. Also number 14 for the Philadelphia Phillies. Also number 14 for the Montreal Expos. Yeah. And when you're talking about somebody like Pete Rose, there's really, I mean, where do you start? Where do you start? And I don't want to, and here's the thing. I want to stop short of honoring a lot of what he did, or honoring him as a whole because of a lot of what he did. A lot of what he did, some things that came to light about him towards the end of his life, not pretty at all. But I'm going to try to focus on him as a baseball player, as a teammate, as manager. We'll just talk about things that happened in his career. I was never huge one way or the other for Pete Rose's candidacy eligibility for the Hall of Fame. As you know, he had been the all-time baseball hit king, more hits than anyone in baseball history as of 1985. He retired as a player in 1986. He was managing the Reds since 1984 and continued to do so into the 1989 season when it was discovered that he had been gambling on baseball, including his own team, which he lied about for 14 years before finally coming clean in one of his books. Or I don't know if he wrote 2 books, but in the book that came out, My Prison Behind Bars, which I bought and loaned to a friend who decided to never give it back. I would love to read that book today. He was banned from baseball immediately by Bart Giamatti, the commissioner at the time, who then died about less than 2 weeks later. But the ruling still held up. Rose was banned, but he had the Hall of Fame to look forward to for his playing career. But then they passed the rule, the Hall of Fame did, said if you're on baseball's permanently ineligible list, as he now was, you could not get in the Hall of Fame. And that was the ruling that was handed down. He was blocked that day. That was in 1990. That rule was created, I believe, and then it was enforced for the rest of his life. There are plenty of Pete Rose artifacts in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of video of him, individual things he did, but he does not have a plaque. He is not honored the way that Babe Ruth and Willie Mays and Ricky Henderson, he does not have that. He was not allowed to work in baseball, obviously, ever again, which I totally agree with. You can trust him to not gamble on baseball again, which I believe he did. I can't say, I don't know if I believe if he bet on the Reds to lose. I fully believe he bet on them to win at some point, because that's just the kind of guy he seemed like he was. Just always looking for that extra push, that extra incentive to try to get that W. He was a winner. He won, 3 World Series? 3? Let's see, 1 with the Phillies, and I believe 3 with the Reds. 70, yeah, if I'm right, he won 4. And it wasn't by accident. They won because they won largely because of him. If you didn't know about his career, he was a switch hitter, not a big guy, like 5 foot something. Switch hitter, played outfield, played third base, played first base. I think he played second base too. Played wherever you needed him. Hustled. Charlie Hustle was his nickname. Well deserved. All-time leader in baseball games played. All-time leader in at-bats. All-time leader in hits. Right up there with, I think he's number 2 in doubles. Uh, when he won batting titles, he was not a home run hitter. He didn't hit a ton of homers. Didn't have to. I don't think he would have wanted to because you don't get to slide into people, knock them down, get your uniform dirty when you hit home runs unless they're inside the park, right? But even from as a young player in 1970, speaking of knocking people down, when he knocked out the late Ray Fosse, well, didn't knock him out, but he barreled into him during the All-Star game. Trying to, you think about how the All-Star game in the NBA is now, where they all just delicately, ooh, no, don't touch me, it's the All-Star game. Ooh, you're gonna dunk? Okay, I'll just stand way back here with my hands up. Oh, don't hurt me, please. Oh, please don't hurt me. I don't want to pull the hamstring. You think about how disgusting the effort is in the All-Star game in the NBA today. At least the baseball All-Star game remains competitive. And always has been. Now, it was never meant to be this competitive. And Rose took a lot of heat for what he did to Fosse, which basically, I think Fosse did make another All-Star game after the injury. But most people, it could be one of those things where they just say it just to make Rose look worse than maybe he actually deserved. But most people say that Fosse was not the same after that injury he suffered at the hands of Pete Rose. I don't know. This is before my time. I was not born for 10 more years. And all I know is that I'm pretty sure Fosse did make that other All-Star game. I'll look it up and have it for you. So Rose, a lot of what you would hear about Pete Rose in retirement, in forced retirement, was how sad and pathetic he looked at all the card shows he would attend, signing autographs for money, or signing baseballs for money, signing cards for money, doing whatever he had to do, using his name to try to survive, which I don't think that's, I think it sucks that he had to do it on one level, that one of the 13 greatest players of all time was no longer allowed in the game, and that he could not make a living in the sport of baseball that he would have been a champion. Lou Piniella won that World Series in 90, but that had Pete Rose's fingerprints all over that team. You can't tell me that Nick Osaski was the difference maker. Moving him out for Todd Benziger was the difference. You can't tell me that. I'm going to pause because I got to blow my nose and it's affecting my speech. So Pete Rose was, I believe he would take photos with fans, but from what I heard, his personality was always a little bit, okay, what's the word I'm looking for? His personality was always a little bit edgy, a little bit rough. He was never going to be that grandfather. Oh, hello, Sonny. It's good. You're such a fine, strapping young man. You're gonna do great. He was never that guy. We wouldn't want him to be that guy because that would have just been phony. No, Pete Rose just he was a hard ass all the way to the end. You hear him on interviews like our local radio station 95.7 The Game had him on. I want to say it was in 2022 or maybe early 23. They had him on talking about whatever it was. And, hard ass. You could hear it in his voice. Age hadn't softened him at all. And then, at least he got back into baseball in the sense that they let him participate in the All-Century lineup in 1999. They let him come out to Synergy Field and participate on the field there, which baseball did not have to do, but they would have been, it's a case of, do I, Bud Selig, want the fans to hate me even more than they already do? Or can I just concede this one little nugget for them? So Pete Rose came out as part of the All-Century team that year. Then there was one point where the Reds retired as number 14, finally, which they had not been. I don't know if they weren't allowed to do it, but they didn't do it for the longest time. I think it was probably about maybe, 2008? Somewhere around that time they finally retired his number. It may have even been later than that. And they put a single rose, I believe, on third base in honor of him, and it was a great moment. I don't think Pete was there, but still. But the Reds, because he was from Cincinnati, they wouldn't let him be just completely ostracized and forgotten. As much as they could, they tried to at least keep his name alive. Which, hey, what else were the Reds going to do in those days? They didn't have much else to cheer about. They haven't had much to cheer about since he was fired. Or since he was banned, I should say. They had that World Series in 90. Since then, it's been mostly rough times for Cincinnati as a baseball team. They've had some uprisings like in the early 2010s. Guys like Cueto and Joey Votto helped get them back to the playoffs. But then my Giants took care of that, didn't they? So Pete Rose, long story short, in summary, or in closing, I should say about Pete Rose, read that book, My Prison Behind Bars. It's a great book. You see how far he had gotten into this world of people that he had no business being around. And also, if you didn't know this, the day before he died, and I don't know if he was battling health issues up to that point, but the day before he died, and it was released, the photo came out. I didn't see the photo until like the day after he died. There was a photo of Pete Rose with Ken Griffey Sr., I believe Tony Perez, I believe Dave Concepcion, and one other member of the Big Red Machine of the 70s. It wasn't Johnny Bench. I do not remember who the fourth person was, but it was an awesome picture. I love teammates reuniting, and here you had 5 teammates from one of the greatest teams ever reuniting around Pete Rose, who was in a wheelchair. The others were standing. They took a photo, and I don't know if they knew that they were about to lose Pete or not. I really just never got insight on that, but in any event, since they did lose Pete right after that, makes the photo even more amazing than it already would have been. Look that up if you haven't seen it. And do I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, for his playing career with the Astros, yeah. And I'm with a lot of people who say that since his ban was a lifetime ban, that now that his lifetime is over, he should be eligible. That's where I stand. I heard I don't know if it was Seeliger or if it was Manfred that said that that's not going to happen. This was years and years and years ago. That the lifetime ban thing, and just because he passed away does not automatically mean he's going to be eligible. And maybe that was true at the time, but this was years ago. Things have changed. I mean, what is he going to do now? He's not going to bet on baseball anymore. How's he going to tarnish the game now? And they still, if they ever proved that he did bet against the Reds, that proof was never, I don't know where it is. So I just put him in. The man's dead. Just put him in. 2 nights ago, we had a presidential election, but it was not just for president. We were electing also for the Senate and the House and many other offices. One of the Senate spots open was in Texas, and Colin Allred, the former Tennessee Titans linebacker, was running against Ted Cruz. He did not win, and it's really something because Allred was all set to tackle all the important issues in America. Then we also had in Minnesota, it was Royce White, the 2012 Houston Rockets draft pick, who ended up playing 3 NBA games with the Kings. He had mental illness, and there was a big controversy around him not willing to travel with the team. He was running for, I can't pronounce the woman's name, but he lost his race for the Senate. And that's really something because most people thought his campaign was going to be a slam dunk. Finally, Steve Garvey, some people think he should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, played all those consecutive games in a row, great player for the Dodgers and the Padres, was running for Senate out here in California where I am, and he lost in his bid for the seat left vacant by Dianne Feinstein. And it's ironic that Garvey lost because apparently he was ahead at one point in the polls, but somehow they got thrown a curveball. And that will transition us to tonight's Skillz on Pills. As you may or may not know, I take blood pressure medication. And one of the reasons why I take this blood pressure medication, as I struggle to cover the label up, is because the sports world often gets my blood pressure a little higher than it should be, as well as other elements of life. So, yeah, I take these pills. And what's got me a little riled up this week, and we just got done talking about Steve Garvey, who played in a lot of Major League games, who almost never missed a game, who didn't miss a game for 12 years, however long it was, to a player who's been missing more than his share of games, in Joel Embiid for the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's an incident with him and an incident with Jason Kelsey of the Philadelphia Eagles that's got me a little riled up this week because a reporter brought up Joel Embiid, who's already frustrated from all the questions about us not playing, and then a reporter brought up his deceased brother as well as his son and some ridiculous nonsense that they were. And Embiid, in so many words, threatened the reporter and then put his hands on him. It wasn't an attack; it was more like a shove. He was hit with a 3-game suspension by the NBA. for his actions against a reporter. And I'm not saying that he should have put his hands on him. I'm saying he was right to do it, but you have to factor in everything. And then there was Jason Kelce, who was accosted by a fan calling his brother Travis of the Chiefs the F word, the other F word, because of Taylor Swift. And Jason Kelce responded by ripping the fan's phone from his hands, because the fan was filming all this, trying to get on TikTok, I'm pretty sure. Ripped his phone from his hands, slammed it on the ground, probably destroyed it, and called the fan the F word in return. So you have two Philadelphia athletes who are getting disrespected, right to the, disrespected, facing disrespect right to their faces, and they're reacting, and they reacted physically. And the thing is, Kelce apologized. They can't suspend him because he's retired now. Embiid is suspended for 3 games when he's already struggling to get back to the court. But there's no penalty for the people who instigated any of this. And that's what burns me, is that fans have too much power. Reporters have too much power. You can push these athletes' buttons. And again, I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying it's right to put hands on people. What I am saying is that there has to be consequences for when you run your mouth too much, or when you say the wrong thing, or when you bring up someone, a dead relative or a dead loved one to somebody is clearly sensitive about the topic, and there's no repercussions, and you can just do so freely, and the person doesn't have a right to overreact. That's what bothers me. Because there's a lot of problems in society, I'm telling you this right now, a lot of problems in society would be eliminated, at the very least reduced, if putting hands on people was more allowable for when you're disrespected. A lot of disrespect will go away. And a lot of these people, they're just trying to make, this reporter here is probably just trying to make a name for himself in the worst way possible. And now he's famous. He's famous because he crossed the line with Joel Embiid, who's already probably tense from all the questions about his not playing. And then you have an idiot teenager, I think he's like 18, outright disrespecting the brother of Jason Kelce to his face, knowing what could happen to him, knowing if there was no cameras around, he wouldn't dream of disrespecting either one of the Kelces right to their faces for fear of getting his nose busted. And he's lucky he didn't get his. There's a lot of players who would have pounded that kid. He's lucky he only lost his phone. Kelce should not have apologized, and that's what bothers me, that he felt that he had to apologize. And should he have used the F word? Probably not. But there's such a thing as triggering. You cross the line, you trigger someone, you flip that switch, you're just as responsible as they are, in my opinion. You are just as responsible as they are, and you face no consequences. And that's the unfair part. That this kid now, I don't know if I still haven't heard if his name has been published or not, but if it has, then he got what he wanted, which is outrageous. His TikTok following probably grew by a couple thousand at minimum. If he didn't have one already, he's got one. It's outrageous. It's absurd. Don't apologize when you're standing up for your people, and do not apologize when you're standing up for people who you love, who are being disrespected or talked about after they've passed away. There's lines. There are lines, and that is Skillz on pills. But that's going to be it for Skillz on Sports. Feeling pretty good. My 49ers are getting Christian McCaffrey back this weekend from his injury absence, his Achilles problems. I am hoping that this is not going to re-flare up once he takes the field on Sunday, as he's expected to do. You never know with these things. We had Baltimore and Cincinnati Thursday Night Football tonight. I'll have that score for you in the notes. And then we'll also have coming up tomorrow night the Warriors back in action. My Warriors back in action. And then Tuesday coming up is when the Warriors will be hosting Klay Thompson and the Dallas Mavericks. Come back to town on Tuesday to the Chase Center. Now that'll be a very, very, very emotional night in terms of, hey, how can it not be? How can it not be? How can you not be excited, be saddened at the same time with the all-time greatest of your franchise coming back to play with his new team who's trying to take you down in the Western Conference? So with all that, I hope you do another show next week. This has been Skillz on Sports. I am your boy Skillz. I will see you later, and I will not be running for the Senate anytime soon.